everyone, welcome to our live today. I'm going to be with Marlee Liss. I'm going to put my blue blockers on and let me see if I can pull her up here. Guest request, all your viewers. Okay, so once she pops in, I will grab her up on the stage and we will get going. And I'm so excited to share this live with you today. Let me see. And we'll get Marlee pulled up in here. Let's see. There we are. Adding you and sending the invite. Hey! All right.
Hi, we did it.
We were having some tech issues, so we decided to just go like old school live in here instead. So here we are.
Yes. Here we are.
Here we are.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you. Perfect. Can you hear me as well? Awesome. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Well,
Yay.
let's go ahead and get started. I am so excited to announce and share and host this live with Marlee. And she is a reclamation coach, speaker, author, and restorative justice advocate. She is also queer, sparkle-loving, Jewish feminist, and a trailblazer. Marlee made history in the justice system when her sexual assault case became the first in North America to conclude with restorative justice through the courts. And since then, she has coached hundreds of women internationally in reclaiming their sensuality and embodied leadership. Marlee has shown her voice in Forbes, Huffington Post, Buzzfeed, the Mel Robbins Show, Recovering from Reality podcast with Alexis Haines, and many more. And she is also an award-winning speaker and has presented for the U.S. military sexual assault response team on an elite panel for National Action Plan to End Gender-Based Violence, also on Fordham School of Law, and many more. So Marlee, welcome, welcome, welcome. And before, just a little tidbit for this container, we are diving into some really powerful topics today, and I wanted to give our viewers a potential trigger warning that we will be discussing topics in regard to the aftermath of sexual assault. We won't be diving into the specifics of that, but we will be discussing the healing journey and restorative justice experiences that led Marlee to where she is today. So I wanted to give a fair warning for that, but we won't be diving into like details. And with that being said, Marlee, welcome. And I would love for you to start us off by sharing, you know, your story from your experience, and you can kind of start from wherever you'd like, but yeah, just getting to say hi and coming on in.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy that we're doing this and that we could make a little creative tech solution. Yeah, so I guess I could share my whole life story, but I won't. I'll start from like that experience that we're talking about today. So I experienced sexual assault in 2016, and just for context, like before that, I had been living for 3 months on an ashram for the divine feminine. So I was so deep in like safety, and just like it was such obviously a huge contrast. So that happened just a week after I got home from that ashram, and that was like a life-changing experience for me. I think that, of course, like rape is a horrible experience, but it also like opened the floodgates for me to feel everything that I had been bottling up throughout my whole life. So it just like sent me into the biggest dark night of the soul, like depression, PTSD. Trump was elected like a month later, and I really felt like love had lost on the planet. Like it felt so global to me. And I kind of reported my sexual assault to the police out of this is what you're supposed to do mentality. Literally after the assault, I got home. I like stood outside my dear friend and roommate's door for about 20 minutes being like, knock now and tell her what happened, or you might not ever say anything. And I built up the courage to knock. I went in, And she was like obviously not obviously, but she was incredibly supportive. And we literally Googled, what do you do after rape? And the internet said, go to the hospital, get a rape kit, report to the police. And I was obviously in such a state of shock, that I was just like, okay, like, you know, I didn't reflect on it. I didn't meditate on it. I was literally just going through the motion. So we went to the hospital, did the rape kit, reported to the police. And in terms of consent, like, I had no idea that that was me consenting to a 3-year punitive process where I'd go to court. I wouldn't be able to say, that question makes me really uncomfortable, I don't want to answer it. Like, there was this rule that because you reported this right after the assault, if you don't answer and go along with this whole process, like, you could be charged for being non-cooperative, which is just insane. I have so many feelings about the punitive system, and even the fact that you know, I even got to a preliminary trial is like a reflection of my privilege as a white cisgender human, and the fact that that's privilege in our world is like, oh, we have a lot of change making and reflecting to do. So yeah, I reported, and 2 years went by before I got to the actual preliminary trial. And this is basically, it's not like the full out trials you see on TV, but it's basically like, is there enough evidence to go to a criminal trial? So it took us 2 years to get there. And in that time, I just like honestly focused on my own healing and survival. I was like totally just, you know, trying to be okay, leaning into all the healing modalities, like literally all of them. So yeah, got to trial, had an awful experience on the stand. Just such incredibly invasive questions, and like such a re-traumatizing and like non-human environment. It honestly felt medieval. They were like, swear, I'm like a gay Jewish girl. They're like, put your hand on this Bible and swear to tell the truth. I'm like, what is this? Like, this is so medieval. So that, you know, that brought me back. Like, it didn't contribute to my healing. It brought me back, if anything. So after that trial, they were like, okay, there is enough evidence to go to a big criminal trial. Another year went by, and again, I kind of just put it to the side. I was like, you know what? It's been 2 years. Like, I want to just start friggin' moving forward with my life and like focusing on me. And so it was like, yeah, a year later. So I guess it was like December 2018 that I got subpoenaed to go to the criminal trial. And when I got that subpoena, my first thought was, you know, maybe I'll drop the charges. Like, this isn't worth it. I don't feel like there's any healing in this form of justice. But the thought of that felt so empty. Like, I was like, I need closure. Like, I need something. I need healing. I need to, like, you know, have a humanizing experience and like grieve and not just like let this go. So I started kind of confiding in a few close friends, and I was like, you know, if this was my world, we wouldn't do it this way. And for context, at this point, I had never heard of restorative justice. Like, I did not know those words. But I told a friend, yeah, this was my world. We wouldn't handle this like friggin' medieval court, whatever. We'd like sit down like human beings and cry together. Like, I'd voice my anger. I'd ask the questions I've been wanting to ask for years. Like, this person would actually go through some kind of process of change and transformation. But I had that desire, and I deemed it delusional because it's not what we see. It's not what we're taught. But I said that to one friend, and she was like so fired. She's like, so make it happen. And the moment she said that was like the moment, like it like lit a fire within me. And I was like, holy shit. Like, I had never thought about actually validating this want enough ask for it, to act on it. And I think that's relatable to all of us in so many different ways. But yeah, once she said that, I started researching, and that's when I found restorative justice. It was like, holy shit, this thing that I've wanted all along has a name and a lineage and like a method and a history. So I found a lawyer. We like marched. This is super like short version of it, but we like marched into the prosecutor's office. We're like, this is what we want. They were not just like, okay. It was like a super back and forth. This is not how things are done. Like, are you kidding me? There were kind of two prosecutors that started fighting for the case, and like 1 to 2 months went by where we just weren't sure what would happen. And my lawyer was like, don't get your hopes up. Like this, it's not usually how it goes. Like the victim, the person harmed isn't usually listened to in this process, which is like, so I did get a call about, 2 months later, and they were like, this one amazing prosecutor, her name's Kara, she's like a dear friend now, like kind of stuck her neck out and was like, yeah, we need this. Like our system doesn't work. It's re-traumatizing for the victim. It doesn't bring any change or transformation for the perpetrator. Usually they get acquitted and get off with nothing. And when they do go to prison, like usually they come out more violent and more angry. So what are we doing here? So she fought for this, and I got a call. They were like, this is happening. That was like one of the most magical, affirming moments of my life. And from there, my assailant started therapy right away. He went to therapy for like 6 months. And then we met in a restorative justice circle, which lasted 8 hours. My mom was there. My sister was there. And I like to say it was like beyond my expectations, but aligned with my dreams, and that like it friggin' worked. Like, like it was transformational. He took full accountability. He apologized. Like he like teared up a few times, which maybe that sounds minimal, but like it meant something so deep to me. And when we left that room, we were like, wow, the world needs to know about this. And that's kind of when I decided to share with the media. And I started, like, it was featured in 6 different articles on one day, like Forbes, Huff Post, like, and I started getting hundreds of notes and letters from survivors being like, I wish I knew about this. And that's sort of when I was like, I'm dedicating my work to this, like through coaching, Sensual Reclamation, and also like dedicating my voice to like serving this story and movement, because it's just so needed.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. It's so powerful. And that's why I was like, oh, I want to get Marlee in here talking about this, because a lot of people don't know what it is. I had never heard this process called restorative justice before, because I lived in Hawaii for a bit and heard of like Ho'oponopono, which is like a very similar practice, but it's not in like the traditional court system. So when we met in Mexico, it was actually the first time that I had like heard of this specifically, and looked into it after that too. So for those who are watching and don't know what restorative justice is specifically, how did they kind of set that up for you? And it sounds like it was an 8-hour event, but it sounds like it was also a lot to kind of push to get that implemented too. So it's not like a practice that is normally just being offered to people.
Yeah. So this is like the first time that this has happened in North America through the courts. To be like super clear, Indigenous, Jewish, Mennonite communities have been doing different versions of this practice outside of the court system, like for a long time. But there's that huge dissonance of like, this is how the patriarchal official court does it, and then like, this is how, human communities do it. So I guess my dream, my vision is that this is like, everyone who like everyone knows about this, whether they want it or not. Like they know that this is an option, because for me, if I had known that this was an option from the beginning, I wouldn't have dragged myself through like 3 years of the punitive system, which sucked, and like sucked my energy. And then B, that there's full access to it. And in full honesty right now, like there's not full access to it right now. Even like like the fact that this happened for me was such a mishmash of miracles, including like that one prosecutor being in the room that day and being like, I'm gonna risk my job to fight for this. So yeah, all that to say that something my lawyer said was like, we're making this path as we walk it, because it hasn't been used for like sex crimes or bigger crimes like murder and things. Like this does get used through the courts for like shoplifting for minors kind of thing. Like they're like this is suitable for that. But I think that in order to make this accessible and like to make us aware of it and to allow survivors who want it access to it, like we have to just like start by shifting our minds and hearts, because like there is awesome legislation in place that makes it like guaranteed that people know about this, but nobody gets told about it. And that comes down to like one cop who's like, I don't know about this. Like I would fucking kill the guy, right? So it's just like people's own biases. So that's why I really focus on like the why behind it in order to help with that shift.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something, I don't know if you're into Taylor Swift, but I watched her documentary and it was really good. But she talks about she had an incident where a guy, I think it was like one of her producers or something, like grabbed her butt, and it like that's minimal compared to what you went through and what other women have gone through. And she talks about how she was like made to feel like guilty until proven innocent in her own case. And she was just like, why is it like for women specifically when something happens that like just how re-traumatizing it, and like you said too, that it is for the person who experienced the wrong. And yeah, the work that you're doing and getting this implemented is so vital and so important to not only getting a corrective, restorative, reformative system in place, but also for the actual healing process of both parties. Because people who act out and do those things, it's like they also are usually, not to make excuses for them, but there is trauma and there is things happening that they are suppressing or not dealing with too. So it's just so important.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And how would you say through this, what were different like healing and things that you did that helped you heal your relationship to your own body and your sensuality and sexuality? Were there different like programs or coaches or things, or I would love to hear a little bit about your journey with that too.
Yeah, I totally went on like a worldwide healing modality tour.
Those are always fun.
I did. I was like, I think I'm really grateful that I had that background context of like I already was pretty equipped with like self-care and whatnot, because I was so into like yoga and self-help and had been living on that ashram. But at the same time, I think that I had a version of healing and spirituality before that was very like love and light only, like no space for anger, no space for sadness, like just like meditate, and like if you smile your brain will get the message you're happy, like all that kind of
the
stuff.
bypass. Yeah.
I was like, I know you'll know what I'm talking about, and hopefully people watching will too. But I think after that I had to really redefine my understanding of healing and spirituality and like the world and being a human, because I was experiencing like so much anger and so much devastation that I didn't know what to do with. So I think that my healing, I mean, the practice that's most near and dear to my heart right now is like somatics world, like somatic sex education and just healing through the body and like acknowledging how much we hold in our bodies. I think also like sexual violence in the aftermath showed me too that we can't always do the mind over matter thing. Like, you know, there were times I tried, I was like, oh, affirmations. And it was like, I was
and your
still,
body's like,
you know,
yeah,
I would literally like break out in hives for a while when I tried to do that. And so I was like, okay, what I was relying on before is no longer working. So we need to pivot. And that's kind of when I got into that space of like, okay, embodiment, somatics, like actually letting myself express anger and shake and like make sound, like and like not smile all the time, like that more whole version. So I think it was a combination of embodiment practices like that, which came through dance, somatics, yoga, like mirror gazing, eventually not right away, but eventually like self-pleasure, reclamation through like really empowering shared intimacy, that combined with education and just education on rape culture and sexism and like like realizing that so many of the insecurities and fears that I held didn't originate with me, but were actually like taught through the media, through our culture. And that was such a liberating grounds to like let myself off the hook and be like, oh wow, like I'm not just a insecure, scared girl. Like there's a whole rape culture that we're navigating every day. So that combination of like embodiment and education is definitely like the sauce for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like because the work I do is in somatics as well, and most of the people in this group are educated in that, but for anyone who doesn't know what somatic is in regard to, it's almost like I like to call it therapy for your body, but it's having a felt sense experience of healing in your body and working with your nervous system and your body to move through any held trauma or emotions or things that get kind of lodged in your body, because that's all the feeling state and the unconscious that our mental mind, it's like we can't mindset our way out of trauma. I don't believe that that's possible. So I just want to like state that too, because some people, when I talk about somatics, they get kind of like, what does that mean? And so I just wanted to also speak to that. And through that journey, how for you, and just from like talks we've had and from things I've seen that you've posted, where you did not know or think, or maybe you had some inkling that you were queer, but it sounds like this whole process opened you up to being like, well, shit, I'm gay. So I'd love to hear more of your like uncovering of that and how you really like got to embody and really fully express yourself from this experience too.
Yeah, love that. One of my favorite topics right now is like, let's talk about me being gay.
I love it.
Yeah, even when I met you, I was like identifying as bi, and then about like a month and a bit later, I was like, oh, holy shit, I'm lesbian, like full gay. Yeah, so yeah, I think that it all comes together. I think that like I started feeling aware of my attraction to women right after trauma, and that was too much to deal with at that time. I was like, I just need to get through this trauma experience. Like, let's put that in the shelf and come back to it. So in that time, I was really focusing on like reclaiming sexuality in terms of like things I had just never, we're not taught this shit. Like things like, what does a yes feel like in my body? What does a no feel like in my body? Like I didn't have any kind of foundation for any of that. So that definitely played in because I was so caught up in like performance and like approval from men and the male gaze before that I didn't have that understanding of what was actually happening in my body. So I think at that time I started I almost called it like, this is like my second sexual foundation. Like it felt like I had a first kiss after that assault. It felt like I had a first date. Like it all felt like a new set of first, because like it was just all slashed to the fucking ground before that. And then I was like, okay, let's rebuild. And so it started with that, like my own relationship to sexuality in my own body, like forget anyone else. Like that was like the main thing. And then with time I was like, okay, like maybe I can look at this like attraction to women thing. I had to work through and continue to work through like a fuck ton of internalized homophobia and like so much fear of making other women uncomfortable. And it was like, because I had been hurt by sexual energy, I was like, oh my God, like I don't want to bring that into sisterhood spaces, women's retreats. Like so I had to work through a lot of like fear of being predatory, and had to really reclaim that like sexuality is innocent. Right. And like being predatory, like misusing that energy and being abusive with it is like a whole other thing. So it was like a natural progression with my healing. And then I think a big part too was just like representation. It was like just meeting other people who were like, oh yeah, like it's cool to be queer. Like you can be bi, you can be this. I was like, oh. So I think getting into like tantra spaces, it was like almost the norm to be pan or fluid or open to sharing intimacy or intimate moments with different people. So first I was just like, okay, I've always been attracted to men. Now I'm attracted to women. Therefore I'm bi. And it wasn't till this past December that like a close friend said to me, like, you know, I'm questioning if I'm lesbian. And that was like this big, like, whoa, I've never like let myself be like, I've never let myself think of that as a possibility. Just like from our culture and like all the stereotypes I held around the word lesbian and like lack of representation. So it took a lot of like sifting out, and then just like universe sign moment. The movie Prom, the musical, have you seen it?
I don't think I have, actually.
It's like really cheesy, like by the same person who did Hairspray. It's like basically about queer women in high school, and it's really like light and like joyful. And I watched it came out on my birthday. I was like quarantining because of COVID, and I watched it and I was like bawling to the point of hyperventilation after. And I was like, okay, like there's like a really deep longing here. So I started working with some different like LGBTQ self-love coaches, like changing who I followed on Instagram, just like doing so much deep work in myself to validate and to be like, this does not need to be a source of like shame. It can be super beautiful. And yeah, I feel like really empowered in that now, and just like proud of myself for coming so far with that.
That's so beautiful. And yeah, it's amazing how I'm always like, what century do we live in that it's still so much cultural stigma around people's sexuality and expressing sexuality and what your sexuality is, or even with gender identity, all the things, and how much inner work it actually takes for most people to be able to not just be cis hetero, you know, like out of the norm kind of thing. And it's such an amazing journey to watch, you know, when people come home to their truth, and that is just so beautiful. And that kind of leads me into my next question too, around how you feel like this journey helped you find your voice, and what that has meant for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's definitely been a huge point of reclamation. Like that was the thing that felt the most lost to me through assault. And I don't want to like get into graphics things, but maybe I can just share like one thing. Like there's a sign that I held at a women's march that said like, he covered my mouth, but now my voice feels louder than ever. And I just think like that experience of rape combined with what we as women and non-binary humans like experience throughout our whole lives of like all these systems silencing us or saying like, oh, you know, like, oh, cute idea. And then like a man says it, the same thing, and they're like, wow, that's brilliant. So I think just like people forget that like sexual assault is not an isolated thing. It's like we're in a rape culture like growing up, like always, and then that just like is like nail in the fucking coffin sometimes. So I just like I felt so disconnected from my voice. I remember that was my biggest fear in court. I was like, what if they ask me a question and I open my mouth to speak and like nothing comes out? Like I just felt so silenced. And so now I'm like, I have a totally different association to this story. Like, I'm not going to say like it doesn't affect me at all. And it's like sunshine and rainbows when I think of it. Like, I'm still like, that was a horrible thing that happened. No one should go through that. And at the same time, I'm like, wow, this is like affirmation of my resilience. And like, you know, I've told this story in so many contexts, like to fellow survivors at charity events, like as a keynote speaker, like consulting for government officials and being like, this is what you need to implement. And it just feels like such a fierce reclamation of voice and a shift from being like, oh, I'm the victim in the room that people need to coddle. It's like, no, I'm the educator because I've lived this. And that feels like so badass and good. So definitely like I have a really beautiful relationship to voice now. And I really believe in like the power of like creation when it comes to our healing too, like creativity. And like for some people that means making art or dancing or like writing a book or getting into storytelling, but like that all feels like part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I would imagine even from the event through how it was in the court systems and just for our culture in general, for women having a voice and not being seen as crazy or bitchy or too much. It's like so many things that get put on our voices. And when we can really own them, how powerful, it's like chilling how powerful women are when they really own and or feel safe in speaking their truth, and it's powerful. And what do you feel like, maybe along the lines of that or just in general, is the most impactful thing in your own healing journey that was like when you knew you wanted to share it with other women, whether it was about voice or all of it? Like, I'm curious of what were like the key things that you really wanted other women to know.
Good question. I think it is like taking up space with voice. And I don't know if it's my like full fire chart, like sun Sag, moon Aries, rising Sag, like so much fire. But I literally like broke silence about this assault a week after it happened. And I was in it. I was not like, oh, I'm gonna be an activist. I was just like, fuck this. Like I was, you know, scrolling through Facebook, and at the same time, like Brock Turner's case was all over the headlines, who met with like, who we now know to be Chanel Miller, who's fucking amazing. But I was seeing it everywhere, and it was just like everywhere I turned was like rape culture. And I was just like, why the fuck are we all just like, and Me Too movement hadn't happened yet either. It wasn't like normal to like speak about it. And I was just like, this is so backwards. And I posted about it on my Instagram, which was like much smaller back then, but someone ended up sharing it, and it was like shared like 6,000 times or something. And I was basically saying like, I want to challenge expectations of silence and shame for the victim. And I was like, I'm not okay. Like, but like this isn't acceptable. So I think that I think that like desire and impact making are creative acts. And I think that that's what's always like saved me, whether it's like dance or writing and like meaning making. So for me, it's like, wow, if I can take this shitty thing and like go through my own healing journey and then like inspire and impact people, like then it was all worth it. And I think just like that revelation with restorative justice, and this is like, again, so relatable for all of us in any context. Like I had that want to like sit in a circle and just sit down with this person and them to go to therapy. I had that want like since the rape happened. But for 3 years, I was like, this is so far from our patriarchal reality. It'd be ridiculous to ask for it. So I just invalidated my want and need to such a degree that I was like, advocating for this is not even an option. And it wasn't until that one friend was like, make it happen, that I was able to validate it enough to act on it. And it's like, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have asked for it. I wouldn't have fought for it. I wouldn't have sought out a lawyer and been like, let's fucking make this happen. So I think that that's what I want women to know, is just like, whatever you want and need in this moment and whenever is like valid, and we deserve to trust our bodies and value our needs enough to ask for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's that, and this goes along with what I studied with Mama Gina, where like trusting a woman, trusting her desires is literally like one of the most powerful things for the world, because that's where our creations come in, and that is where restorative justice happens and things actually change, and new things come into the world. And it's if anything else from this live today, for women to understand that they're not delusional for their desires, and their desires are soul seeds. They are the thing that is bringing life and creation and beauty and all the things that we need so much healing in the world. So that's so important. Thank you for sharing that. I also wanted to ask, just like really quickly too, for people that kind of don't understand what you like when we say rape culture or patriarchy. Some people like, they may have like heard the terminology before, but they might not understand that. I know for me, a big one for rape culture is there's like this non-consensual aspect where like misogyny, or like men always being right, or like mansplaining or over talking women, and that aspect. But I'm curious if there's a couple things that you can touch on to kind of help people understand what you mean by rape culture and or patriarchy, because that is something I use these terms as well. So but
Yeah. Okay, I have a prop I want to use that I see. Maybe let's like, I'm going to break this association after, but this is like a little pyramid, right? And maybe people have seen before like what's called the rape culture pyramid. And it's basically helping us realize that rape, like the most extreme version of rape culture, is not isolated. Like I was saying, it's part of a whole thing, a whole system. So rape culture is basically like saying that like at the bottom of this pyramid are like the things we experience in everyday life that we deem pretty normal. So that can be like a TV show where guys in the show are talking about a woman like she's an object. So they're like, what a hot piece of ass, I want to tap that. Like, you know, just these like little comments like that. Certain magazines like rating women based on how pretty we are, like all that kind of objectification stuff. So that's like at the bottom of the pyramid. And then as you go up, it gets a little more extreme. So then we get to this part, and now it's like, maybe it's catcalling, shouting something out. Maybe it's like a guy making a bet with his friends that he can like sleep with someone. Maybe it's locker room talk, you know? And then it gets more extreme, and it's like each step of the way, we're justifying stuff. We're like, well, that's normal. And then we get here and we're like, well, that's normal. Yeah. And then we get here and everyone around them's doing it, and they've already justified all this. So they're like, well, this is normal too. And this is where they get to like, maybe now there's groping. Maybe now there's like cornering someone. Maybe now there's like pressuring someone into sex or thinking that they feel entitled, right? And it's like, again, it gets more extreme. And then eventually there's that point of justification of, well, if all this is okay, now so that person can justify rape or trafficking or, you know, really like horrible things like this. So I don't know if that is like clear, but it was kind of fun to describe it with a prompt.
I love it. Yeah, no, that's perfect. And it's interesting because like I am a rape baby and it was with a married couple, like, and so I just want to like to speak to what you're saying, where like it can happen in relationships that we think are consensual, but consent is a daily thing. It's not just like in the beginning. And so thank you for laying that out, because that's like, it just goes to show how desensitized all of us have gotten to what's okay and what's not. And I think us as women being so attuned to our body and what is our yes and our no, that it's and being in tune with our voice, that we can learn how to navigate and start healing that on more of a systemic level too. So thank you. That was a wonderful example.
I think what's really like exciting about it too, like I think sometimes we hear systems like that and people feel like, oh my God, like what can we do? It's like so much bigger than me. There's nothing I can do. And what I actually like about this realization is that like we can do a lot, because like it's this stuff at the bottom that's the foundation of it all. So, you know, if we say like, you know what, I want to get into the space of media and help create like shows and podcasts that have a different message. Like I want to, you know, so there's actually a lot we can do to break that foundation down in our own bodies and communities and relationships. So it does feel like such a bridging of like embodiment work and systemic work.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So since you've been on this sensual reclamation journey, I want to hear more about your Sensual Wholeness Academy and how women can get in connection with you or check out what you got going on.
Yay. Yeah. So I'm doing a whole bunch of things, and I call the Sensual Wholeness Academy my self-love child. Like I'm just like, this child was like totally born of all the self-love. I'm sure you feel that way too, Nicole, with your work. Like, so I'm obsessed.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with my work. We just got like pink satin robes that say Sensual Wholeness Academy on them, and that was like a dream I had for so long. So this is my signature 8-month group coaching program, and it's a really, really, really beautiful space where you get to be a part of a worldwide community of women reclaiming sensuality, sexuality, self-love, body love. Super beautiful. We have like live weekly calls. We have embodiment practices like dance and swamping, like getting all the shit out. We have like workshops on consent and boundaries, like communicating boundaries, loving your body, unlearning messages from patriarchy standing between you and your highest pleasure, like empowered intimacy. We definitely bring in that like queer lens, celebrating LGBTQ identities, and also like non-monogamous, unconventional relationships. It's super, super, super beautiful, and it is open right now. So if people are curious about it, I think I sent you links, Nicole, like, but people can message me because I'm a human, but you can also go to marleeliss.com/SWA and you'll see like plenty of details. You'll see like a super emotional trailer that I made that has like testimonials and like what it's all about.
I haven't seen it yet. I'm gonna go watch it.
Yeah, I watch it all the time and I just like cry. I'm like eating popcorn, like I made this.
I love it.
So yeah, it's open right now. If anyone's like curious or drawn to that work around sensual reclamation, like really gorgeous sisterhood and embodied empowerment, we've got you. You can book a free consultation call with me and we can talk about it.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll drop all the links, how you can check that out and check out Marlee's trailer and go eat some popcorn and watch it too. And Marlee, thank you so much for joining today. And from the moment we met in Mexico and just seeing your journey, it's like you're just already have been and are going to change and help heal so many women's lives. And even more on like a foundational system, getting into this piece of healing the patriarchy and really getting women's voices heard and changing the healing system, because the system that's in play right now is not meant for healing. It's just meant to keep people stuck in cycles. So just more power to you, babe. And yeah, we'll chat soon.
Amazing. Thank you so much, love. And thank you everyone for listening.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
Bye.